Hello, everyone. I'd like to talk to you for a little bit about investing and saving your money. Investing is saving up your money and putting it to use that will not bear any fruit for some time. It's thinking about the future, it's preparing for the future. The Bible has a lot to say about preparing for the future, both economically and spiritually. Now, I'm going to look at some Bible verses that talk about the economic side of savings, although, of course, there's many other places you could talk about preparing for the future spiritually. Proverbs 21:20 says, "The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down." What a wise saying, that some people eat all that they make and it's gone. You live paycheck to paycheck. Other people store some up for a rainy day. This coronavirus thing has really shown who are the people who have saved and who are the people who have not. Of course, a great example of saving for the future is found in Proverbs 6. Go to the ant, thou sluggard. Why is the ant wise? Because the ant works hard in the summer to prepare for the winter. And ants survive the winter because of that. Many insects do not. 1 Timothy 6:17 says, "Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment." Not saying don't be rich. He's not saying be careful not to make too much. This is not an anti-wealth statement. He's saying don't put your hope, don't put your trust and your faith in wealth. Wealth is easy come, easy go. It says wealth is so uncertain. Put your hope in God instead. God is the only one who is always there no matter what. Proverbs 27:23 says, "Be diligent to know the state of your flocks and attend to your herds. Take care of your business." Did you know that this was almost the motto of America? Benjamin Franklin got this motto put on some of our earlier coins: mind your business. He's not saying don't stick your nose into other people's business. He says do have your nose in your own business. Take care of your own business. You ought to know what's going on with your own business and finances. James 4:13 through 15 says, "Now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city or spend a year there, carry on business and make money. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that." Again, this is not anything bad against businessmen or people who plan for the future. You should be planning for the future. He is saying, don't forget to involve God in your planning. You can make the best plans in the world, but you really don't know what the future will hold. But you know who does is God. So when God gives you a piece of advice or a command, you follow it, you obey, because He knows the future, you don't. The Bible has much to say about being wealthy honestly or dishonestly. Proverbs 13:11 says, "Dishonest money dwindles away, but he who gathers money little by little makes it grow." The only real honest way to make money is little by little. There is no get rich quick scheme that both works and is honest. There are plenty of ways to get rich quick by dishonest means, like by being a drug dealer or bank robber, but there is no honest means that is absolutely sure and will actually work. Proverbs 16:8 says, "Better is a little with righteousness than vast revenues without justice." I would rather be poor and honest than rich and unjust. And Leviticus 19:13 says, "You shall not oppress your neighbor nor rob him. The wages of a hired man are not to remain with you all night until morning." I've heard some stories from some of you saying that you were not paid by your bosses all the time, or your bosses took a long time to pay you. That is exactly what Leviticus says not to do. If you hired someone to do work, you pay him. If they already held up their end of the bargain, you have to hold up your end. They promised they would work for so long for so much money. They did the work. Don't make excuses. Oh, I can pay you tomorrow. No, pay them today. And in your book, it actually quotes the story of Joseph being warned in a dream that there would be those years of plenty and then the years of famine. And God providentially warned him, you need to save up an awful lot of food for the future, or else many people will die. Well, not only did Joseph and his quick work, not only did it save many lives, but also made him and Pharaoh a fortune. The people sold all their money for the food and then all their livestock, and then they made themselves servants of the king. And the king was greatly empowered because of this investment, long-term investment. When we're looking at savings and investment, What we're really looking at is what are you spending your money on? Are you spending it on consumer goods or producer goods? Remember, the consumer goods are things that I use right now to make myself happy. Buying a steak, buying new clothes, buying something that is used up pretty quickly and I'm just using it on myself. A producer good or a capital good is something that's only used to make more money or to make more goods. That is an investment. One great example of long-term forward thinking and investment is research and development or R&D. Many companies spend millions of dollars a year simply researching better products and new products. Companies like McDonald's have test kitchens where they employ thousands of people, many top chefs and food scientists, and they spend millions a year on new recipes for different outlets. They'll test them out, see how well they do. They try to improve their recipe or make up new ones. And that works. That makes them a lot of money and makes their company better in the long run. Now, where would Batman be without Lucius Fox, Morgan Freeman, and his R&D department? Good thing he had all those cool toys, huh? When less is saved, less is invested in capital or producer goods, which makes production in the future either lessen or not increase as much as it could. Everyone suffers in this case. The boss doesn't get as much profit as they used to. The shareholders don't get as much profit as they used to. And it trickles down all the way down to the workers who are either fired or reduced hours, or maybe even workers aren't hired who would be otherwise hired. Not investing in the future is a lose for everyone, whereas investing in the future is a win from everyone, from the richest shareholder down to the lowliest, $7 an hour worker. One big reason for poverty is a lack of understanding in how to save for the future, or just how important savings and investments are. Many people are in debt because of this. Many companies are as well. But the biggest example of this that I can think of is the government. The politicians and the government, they really think short term. Well, what can get me elected and reelected? And the short term fixes often cause long term problems. The government is in about $22 trillion of debt right now. I'm just thinking about their handling of this coronavirus problem. They just gave out several $1,000s to every man, woman, and child in America, $2 trillion. Now, I'm not saying that that won't help. I'm not saying that it is not incredibly helpful for some people. I know some people, don't need it nearly as much as other people, but I'm not saying it's not helpful. What I am saying is someone has to pay that money back in the future. It helps in the short term and it hurts in the long term. And of course, whenever we look at debt, we also have to look at interest as well. $2 trillion. I hate to think what the interest rate on that is and how much that's going to be. We're going to be paying off this coronavirus debt for decades in the future. Your grandkids might be paying off this coronavirus debt. Again, I'm not commenting on whether or not it was a good idea. I am saying that it was a short-term fix that had really long-term ramifications. And politicians who are little kids right now are going to be the ones who grow up going to politics and inherit the debt. There is a great example of history about politicians thinking very short term and hurting themselves in the long term. And that is when Hannibal Barca invaded Italy. Maybe you remember him crossing the Alps with his elephants at great personal risk. Well, Hannibal rampaged across Italy for about 15 years, and he never lost a single major battle. Not once. The problem was that the politicians of the day, the consuls, were elected to 1-year terms, and they were not allowed to run again. So you have one shot at glory. These consuls, there were two of them. They were like the presidents, but there were two heads of state, and they would act as generals as well. So when a consul got elected, he would immediately raise the biggest army he could and go rush out to meet Hannibal. And what always happened is that they would go off half-cocked, they would not have proper preparation, and they would be defeated. So year after year after year after year, another consul came and went, another consul came and went, and Rome is being absolutely crushed until one gentleman named Quintus Fabius Maximus Verrucosus, often known as Fabian. His strategy is to raise an army and not attack Hannibal. Instead, keep near him. And if any of his men go out in search of food or other supplies, we stop that raiding party. We have small skirmishes, mostly designed to hurt their morale and keep them on their toes. but we will not fight them. And anytime they come at us, we will retreat. We will just hang out until our army is big enough to finally defeat him. Guess what? This was an incredibly unpopular plan. Everyone is saying, "Oh, Fabian, what are you doing? You're not winning. You're doing nothing to help the crisis." Blah blah blah. This guy's a moron. And yet he was the most successful general of all those different consuls. Everyone else had a decisive battle where they were decisively beaten. And Fabius, well, he decided to hang back and not allow Hannibal to defeat him. And in doing that, he greatly weakened Hannibal. Today, we call that the Fabian strategy, where the best way to win is to wait and do not a whole lot of anything. In a previous chapter, we talked about the opportunity cost of doing anything. The opportunity cost says, what could you do instead of what you are doing? What is the opportunity cost of savings? I'm putting my money in an investment and I'm not using it to give myself any happiness or any benefit really today. I'm doing it to benefit my future self, to make money for the future. The opportunity cost for savings is often so high that people don't feel like saving, even though the benefits of saving far outweigh anything that you could do to spend it right now. This payment for using money is called interest or dividends, and it needs to be high enough to entice consumers to say, here, take my money. There's some examples on page 129 and 130, and frankly, they are a bit ridiculous. At the top of page 129, it says, for example, suppose that a woman earns an annual salary of $40,000. This woman could spend all that money every year on quality housing, good food, entertainment, nice clothes, and travel, but she decides to save 10% of her earnings, $4,000 a year, and invest that in a savings account in a nearby bank. If the woman were to receive interest upon her bank deposits at 5% a year, she would earn a year's interest of $200. Now, here's the ridiculous part. Go try to find a bank account that gives you 5% a year. My bank account, if I remember correctly, gives me 0.1%, not 5%. This is definitely outdated. I do remember when I was a teenager, I had a savings account that gave me 1.5%, and I thought that was amazing. Yeah, back in the day, when your parents or maybe your grandparents were kids, 5-10% interest annually would not have been crazy uncommon. $200 a year for doing nothing with your money, that's a good incentive. So as we've seen, the opportunity cost for consumer goods is so high. I want to spend money on myself now. In order to overcome that desire, I need to be paid. In this case, the woman who did the savings was paid by a borrower through her bank. So not only do we have to pay for the putting aside instant gratification, we also need to be paid for the element of risk. If I give someone my $10 as a loan, there is a chance that I may never see that money again. And maybe that chance is pretty high. If it's a risky investment, then maybe I really don't want to give this person $10. Well, he has to promise me enough money that that promise is so enticing that I am willing to take the risk. Now, the higher the risk, the higher the reward must be, or else I will not take the risk. In people's minds, they say, well, if I lend out $10 to 10 different people, well, then I need to make sure that I will make a guaranteed winning, even if one or two of these people don't return their money. So if I can make $2 each off of 9 people, that's $18. And then if I lose one guy's investment, that's $10 down, I've still made an average total of $8. So that is what people look at for investments. Even if I lose on this investment, my overall reward needs to be great enough to justify the risk. Here's some terms for you that you probably already know. A debtor is someone who owns debt. This is closely related to the word debit, as in debit card. From the Latin, the word debt just has that silent B because English speakers are lazy, I guess. A debtor is someone who borrows money and needs to return it. A creditor is the person who loans out the money, and that is, of course, where we get the term for credit card. It is a bank loan. The debtor is taking a risk, and he needs to convince the creditor to go along with that risk with him, saying, well, I'm starting a business. Let's say I'm starting a restaurant. I'm risking my own job and my own money. Who wants to invest in me and risk with me? Risk your own money, not just mine. Now, how do you convince someone to loan you money? Well, there's lots of different ways. Usually it involves explaining your plan to make money and hoping that the sharks in the Shark Tank like your plan. Another one is to convince them of your own character. If someone knows you, then maybe they're more willing to lend you money. And if you can show them that you have consistently made money in the past, well, then the future risk doesn't seem so bad. Did you know that there is a mathematical model that tells the whole world just how likely you are to borrow money and then pay it back with that interest? That's called your credit score. There are three different bureaus in America that track just about all the purchases and loans and all the different deals that you make with money. They track those and they give you a score from about like 400 to 800 or 900, something like that. And that tells everyone how safe of an investor you are. I would highly suggest that you guys start working on your credit score because a lot of teenagers have done nothing with money. A lot of teenagers don't have a bank account, they don't have a credit card, they don't have any loans, they have nothing. And so when they go to get a loan, not a lot of banks want to be the first person to take a risk on you. And so when they do decide to take a risk on you, they're going to charge high interest. So I would suggest if you do not have a bank account in your own name, go get a bank account in your own name. You could probably get one that doesn't charge you anything and doesn't have any sort of minimum if you're under 18. If you're over 18, you probably have some sort of minimum amount of cash that you need to put in that bank account, but look into it. If you don't have one, go ahead and do that. And then a credit card. I would highly suggest that you get a credit card, even if you never use it or very rarely use it at all. Get a credit card in your own name just for the credit score, so that when you do go to buy a house, buy a car, do something really big in the future, that you will have a good credit score. To find free information on your credit score, go to creditkarma.com. Creditkarma.com will give you free information on your credit score and also tell you how to make your credit score better. It includes things like having a long history. Now, there's nothing you can do with that right now except for open up a bank account or whatever, and then it'll track how long you've done that. So hopefully, if you have a credit card that you've been in good standing for 10 years, then people are more willing to take a risk on you. Guys, a good credit score could be the difference between a 3% or 4% home mortgage loan. And that could be the difference of tens of thousands of dollars over the period of that loan. So do be careful to work on your credit score and make a credit score in the first place, and then make it good. The things that destroy your credit score is if you take out a loan and don't pay it back. If you're late on your payments, that can wreak havoc with your credit score, and then people in the future just will not give you a loan. This is why you can't just take out unlimited loans. If you take out a loan from one bank and then waste it all and then go to another bank and ask for a loan, well, they'll probably be able to check your credit score and say, hey, you haven't paid back Bank A yet. Why would I give you a loan? And that can really harm your financial life. Investing is so much more than simply hoarding wealth and resources. Some people are hoarding right now, hoarding toilet paper, flour, eggs, whatever. And hoarding your cash really doesn't do anyone any good. Even you, it doesn't do you any good. Aristotle said that money does not breed. If you have a sack of quarters under your bed, you're not going to wake up in the morning with a bunch of little dimes and nickels in there. It doesn't happen. To make money, you have to spend money. I know that seems counterintuitive, but it is so much better to have your money invested in some sort of company than to just have it in your bank account. Jesus told the parable, he told several parables like this, of a master giving some money to three different servants and asking them to manage his money while he's gone. And the first two servants do a good job managing his money and manage to double the money. Wow, that's a great investment. Whereas in one parable, one servant just buried his money. He hoarded it. And when the master came back, did that money breed? No. And the master said, are you serious? So, oh, well, the risk. I didn't want the risk of losing it all. The master said, well, no risk, no reward. See, there are some investment plans that are incredibly safe, hardly any risk at all, and therefore has just a tiny bit of reward. And the master said, why didn't you give it to the bank? You would have gotten interest, and it would have been just a few percent interest, just a couple bucks, but that's better than nothing. You did nothing with my money. Now, in the Great Depression, it was very common for people to take all their money out of banks and hide it. They would put it in coffee cans and bury them, or put them under their bed or in the walls of houses. There's lots of stories about houses being renovated and someone knocks down a wall and they find a coffee can full of cash from the Great Depression. That's pretty cool. Um, but when you have money just in a can lying in your house, it does nobody any good. Just having it in the bank might get you a tenth of a percent interest. A word of warning about hoarding gold. A lot of people think that gold is the safest investment ever, and that if I buy gold and bury it under the rose bush, that in 20 years I'll be able to dig up the gold and sell it for a profit. And that's not necessarily true. Gold is like any other good or service in the market. Its price fluctuates based on supply and demand. The price of gold right now is going up and up and up, but it doesn't always go up. Sometimes it goes down. And some people try to deceive people into buying gold. Guess what? Yeah, gold will always be valuable, but will it always be the exact same value? No. You might buy gold now when it's at almost $2,000 an ounce, and then in 20 years it might be down to $1,500 an ounce, and you've lost a lot of money. Gold is not a 100% sure investment. No investment is 100% sure. It is a pretty stable investment, but its price fluctuates up and down. I see commercials all the time of people saying, buy gold, especially in a bad economic time. And they give all these reasons for you to buy gold and try to convince you that it's the only smart idea. But then you got to think, they're the ones selling gold for cash. Why are they selling gold for cash if they think that gold is so much more valuable than cash? They don't. They're betting that the price of gold will go down, which is why they're selling it, and they're hoping that you will bet that the price of gold goes up, which is why they'll hope that you buy it. By far, the simplest means of saving your money is with a bank. Now, there are multiple different types of bank accounts. The two most common are checking accounts and savings accounts. A saving account is meant for long-term storage of your money. It's not meant to be used very often at all. In fact, many savings accounts do not allow you to access your money very easily. I used to have a savings account that said you can access your money twice a year. And if you try to get money out of your account more than twice a year, then there will be a heavy fine imposed on that. Well, that is so that the bank has a long-term investment in themselves. That bank can then spend that money on a long-term investment without having to worry about you taking it away. So that is meant for long-term storage for your money. A checking account is usually opened up in conjunction with a savings account. Most people have one of each. A checking account is meant for many more transactions a year. You get your paychecks deposited in your checking account, and then you spend all your bills. You pay all those bills from your checking account. Checks work. Maybe you've seen people writing checks. Checks are simply an order for your bank to give someone money. And you sign it, and the bank gives that person money from your bank account. Checks are going out of style because electronically it just seems a lot easier for people. But checks are a very, very safe and secure way of transferring money. You have to write it out to a person or company, and that person or company is the only person who can take that cash. For instance, if one of you, let's say Hunter, writes a check out to Drew, and I steal it, and I go to the bank and I say I'd like to deposit this in my bank account. Well, the cashier teller says, this says Drew on it, your name's not Drew, you can't have the money. So even if someone does steal a check, they can maybe make a fake ID or something, but they are pretty safe. That is usually why you get paid by a check, a physical check. It goes from your companies that you work for to your bank account. A debit card works in the exact same way. Think of a debit card as an electronic checkbook. It authorizes a certain business to get money from your bank. While we're on the topic of debit cards, let's talk about credit cards. Credit cards look and work very much like a debit card, only they're completely different. You swipe it, maybe you sign, now you have the chip reader in it. But a credit card is not linked to your bank account. A credit card has the word credit there because you are borrowing money from a creditor. If you use a Visa card, Visa is the one who is paying all your bills. You're like, oh, it's free money. No. Then they ask you to pay them everything at the end of the month. So if I spend, $200 throughout the month, at the end of the month I get a bill for $200, and then I have to pay them via a check or a debit card or a electronic transfer from my bank. Now, why would that Visa card allow you to take out these loans? It's not out of the goodness of their hearts. If you fail to pay your credit card debt at the end of the month, they will charge you an arm and a leg in interest. Let me give you an example. When I had my house in Vermont, I had a 4% interest loan, and that's actually pretty high, 4% on a mortgage. If I had stayed there for 30 years, I would have paid $100,000 in interest, and that is fairly normal. You buy a $200,000 house, 4% loan, you give the bank $100,000. Well, a lot of credit cards don't charge 4% interest when you don't pay them. They charge something like 30% interest. So if you spend $100 and you don't pay them at the end of the month, now you owe them $130. What happens if you spend another $100 the next month? Now you owe them even more than that. See, 130 plus 100 is 230, and 30% of 230 is, I don't know, do the math. That's a lot of money, and it just racks up and up and up and up. Credit card loans are the worst type of loans possible. If you need to go into debt, there are a million ways of going into debt that is much cheaper than a credit card loan. But a credit card loan is really, really easy to use. When you are given a credit card for the first time, they give you what's called a credit limit. My first credit card had a credit limit of only $500. I was in college, I had no credit score, and they didn't trust me with more than $500. But once I got out of college, got a little bit better credit score, they offered to put that up to 1,500, and then I think up to like 3,000. And now I only have 2 credit cards right now, and I only use one of them. But I have a credit limit altogether of about $12,000, I think. Imagine if you spend $12,000 on your credit card and then don't pay it. Even if it was just a 10% interest credit card, which that is incredibly good. 10% interest on $12,000, $120, right? So 1,200, $1,200? Don't max out your credit cards. Now, a cool thing about credit cards is if you pay them back at the end of each month, they don't charge any interest whatsoever. In fact, a lot of credit cards, if you are good at paying them back, they will pay you interest. I have a Quicksilver, what's in your wallet, credit card, and it pays me 1.5% interest on everything that I buy. So if I spend $100, there's $1.20 right there. That's nice, or $1.50. A lot of credit cards charge you a yearly sum, $20, $50, $100, but the nicer ones don't. For myself, I get a lot of credit cards offers in the mail, and I look for 2 things. Number 1, I look for an annual fee. If there's an annual fee, it goes in the trash. Number 2, I look into the rewards. What is in it for me? If they give me points, it goes in the garbage. If they offer me cash back, I take a good look at that. Right now, I don't have a good enough credit score to get anything better than 1.5% cash back. But there's some very rich people who have really good credit scores who get 3% cash back on a lot of things. By the way, my other credit card gives 5% cash back on rotating purchases. It's really weird. Like for a month, they'll say 5% cash back on all your gasoline. Okay, well, I don't buy that much gasoline, so 1.5% cash back on everything all the time is a much better deal for me. All right, more types of saving on page 133. On the right, a CD or certificate of deposit. This is like a savings account, only much more strict. Certificate of deposit is when you give the bank a bunch of money. Usually it's a minimum of $1,000, sometimes even more than that. I've seen some minimum of $5,000 or $10,000. And it is for a certain term limit, 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 5 years. Let's say I give $10,000 for 5 years. I'm not allowed to touch that money at all. But at the end of the 5 years, I get a very large percent interest, maybe 5, maybe 6% interest on that. A very good incentive to give that bank that much money. Now, you are allowed to go back on your CDs and get your money back, only usually they don't give you any interest at all if you take back your money before they mature. Sometimes they even fine you. So if I gave $10,000 for 5 years, at the end of 2 years, I might ask for my $10,000 back. They might give me $9,500 as a penalty for going back on my word, but you can get that money if you're in a pinch. The next type is called a money market account. This is kind of in between a CD and a bank account where they might say, it's better interest than a savings account, but not as good as a CD. And you are allowed a limited number of withdrawals from that account a year. So it's kind of halfway in between.